have with us Professor Roberto Galang of the Ateneo de Manila, who will give us his take on 2013 insofar as the Philippine economy is concerned. Robbie, good morning and welcome to Practical Business.
Good morning, Miguel. It's nice to be here, and I'd like to greet all your viewers out there.
Okay. Robbie happens to be an old friend who I used to interview often during my long stint with another company, with another network. Anyway, Robbie, 2013. I mean, not much has been said in as far as economic expectations is concerned. At least not that I've heard. It could be that the thrust of the current administration may be towards other considerations. To name perhaps the number one consideration is either the peace and order, or law and order, or the anti-corruption campaign. No? So, what do you expect? What can we expect of 2013?
Well, 2013 will probably become a very good year for us, especially because of a couple of factors. The main thing, of course, is the election. You know, when you have elections, you have more spending, both from the government side and the politicians trying to attract voters. So therefore, there's going to be a lot of funds coming into the economy, and so that generally is always good, at least for the first half of the year. And so there's also still the continuing good trend of the investments in the Philippines. Consumption spending seems to be up. There's lots of optimism. So it seems like for the very near term, we should see a continuation of the good economic news that we've been having over the past year or so.
Yeah, Robbie, that's the macro side, I guess. But a lot of our people are becoming more wise, and they're asking how do these economic indicators affect the ordinary Filipino, Juan de la Cruz? Does this translate to food on the table, a roof over their heads? No. So our performance last year, how do you rate that? Is that good? Was that lackluster? Have we done better, and why?
Well, it was extremely good, especially because of the fact that the rest of the world is suffering from an economic crisis. No? So the crisis in Europe is still going on. You still have problems in the U.S. economy. The Chinese economy seems to be slowing down. So given that we hit a lot of record targets in terms of economic growth last year, that's very good. But you're right in the sense that a lot of the growth in the country is not being felt at the bottom. And so most of the growth is still coming from a lot of big businesses spending as opposed to people getting hired for new jobs. Okay. So that's still a major concern.
You know, Robbie, a lot of people, when you talk about the stock market or the basic economic indicators, the currency, a lot of people will become a little bit philosophical nowadays, and they'll tell you the stock market is just hot money. It comes and it goes. No? Pero we tend to tell them that, well, the stock market is an indicator. It is indicative of the general health of the economy. So when your stock market is consistently down, that tells you something.
Correct. And the fact that it's going up, it's also a good sign. But again, a lot of the prices that are going up are from big companies, like San Miguel, Lusutan Holdings. So therefore, it's hard to say how that translates into bread and butter issues that you mentioned earlier. So a lot of the people that are expecting growth are expecting it from the larger corporations, not necessarily from the smaller firms that may be hiring more.
There is presidencies or administrations have the tendency to harp on economic gains if the going is good. But if the going is not too good, they tend to blame previous administration. So how would you rate the Aquino administration insofar as their management of the economy? I mean, generally, because not much has been said. I mean, there is a difference. I mean, I was a reporter during earlier administrations, and I felt more of a thrust towards the economy than as compared today.
That is very true. The Aquino administration is very politics focused. It's very focused on cleaning up the government, instituting anti-corruption patterns, as opposed to making structural changes in the way the economy is performing. In fact, if you look at the sectors that are booming today, these are holdover from prior administrations. So the BPO sector, the tourism sector that is being developed, especially with the casinos going up on Manila Bay. You also have a lot of remittances coming in. So a lot of these are older industries that were actually set up.
So in other words,
year
Robbie, you're
before.
saying that the current administration is basically riding on the wave or the momentum created by earlier administration.
It's a continuation of the trust. In fact, a lot of the people working from the previous administration are still a holdover from today's, especially in their economic team. Like the Bangko Sentral of the Philippines still has the same governor. The DTI chairman used to be, undersecretary during a previous administration. So it's really a continuation of a lot of the reforms that were being done last time. So it's good in that sense because the Philippines needs continuity. And what the Aquino administration brings is a breath of fresh air, a breath of optimism. And in a number of departments, they've done a lot of house cleaning. Especially, I heard that like the DPWH and Public Works seems to be going much better now, much more efficiently. So, but yes, it's...
Is this real, honest to goodness improvement in the way these agencies are run, or could this be just hype, propaganda, whatever? What do you think?
A lot of it seems to be tangible, especially in a few departments. But the problems of the Philippines go much deeper than cosmetic reforms, than anti-corruption issues. We have a lot of structural issues like high power costs, and worse, uncertain power, especially in places like Mindanao,
yes.
or in a few years it will happen here. But the administration has not done anything in terms of easing the creation of new power plants. There's not anything been done on improving the connectivity of the electric grid or bringing down power costs. There has been little labor reform, so it's very difficult to hire people, and which also makes it difficult. It's difficult to lay off people, which makes it harder for firms to keep them in a non-contractual basis.
Yes.
So these things have to be changed.
Before anything, Robbie, morning, Roy.
Good morning, Miguel.
Okay. Roy comes from the services sector. Basically, advertising is a service.
Yes.
So how is
yes.
your industry doing right now?
Our industry is good question.
Okay.
Our industry is I wouldn't say it's growing at a very fast rate. In terms of new companies or growing companies, it's more or less status quo. As you said, kanina, as you said there, we are expecting a lot of new business coming election time, and it has started the last quarter of the previous year. So, well, it's getting there.
My understanding about the advertising industry is that the real bread and butter there is the consumer spending. And of course, consumer spending is also contingent upon the purchasing power of your consumers, of the people, which of course also follows the economic health. If the economy is doing good, I guess people will be spending more. Anyway, we have a very special topic that we'll discuss after the segment. Anyway, I'll ask Robbie first. You mentioned the power sector in Mindanao. We've seen during an earlier Aquino administration what the dark ages can be.
Yes.
Now, of course, this is something that I've maintained for some time. The impact of a series of regular rotating brownouts in 1990 is only a very small portion of its impact in 2013, 2014, 2015. Because before, of course, we needed it for the air conditioner, the lights, and maybe some of those crude electronic systems then. But now, our industries, our services sector, manufacturing runs on power. So I guess the impact of blackouts now would be like, times 10 of what it was before. It can ruin us. So what can be done?
Well, yes, the lack of power is devastating. Yes, for those of us who were working or studying during that time, you know,
You're
12,
studying
yeah,
Studying.
12-hour blackouts were really a killer. There's nothing
They
you
were
can
an
do.
inconvenience then.
No, it was a productivity killer.
Yes.
We were lucky that there are parts of the country like Cebu that did not have this. So the exporters in that area were fine. But for the rest of us here in Manila especially, it was a productivity destroyer. And so that is the major fear that we have to face. It's not really the high cost of power, because we can live with high
High cost, yeah.
costs. It's the lack of power that's going to kill the economy. And so this is what we have to be very careful of, which is why these are the more important reforms that have to be done to ease the way firms should be able to invest in power companies, large-scale investments that are necessary to keep the economy afloat.
You know, they say hindsight is 2020, and I've heard a lot of criticisms about the way the power situation was handled during the time of President Ramos.
Yes.
But at the time when we were experiencing 12-hour rotating brownouts, if a power barge, an expensive, inefficient power barge, was what was needed to alleviate that, then you spend for that.
Correct, correct, yes. No, the problem now is because power costs are very high in the Philippines, there are actually a lot of investors that would want to set up power plants.
So what's the stumbling block?
The problem is that there's lots of regulation at the bottom. For example, local governments now want to get involved in making sure that there is no
The
environmental impact. You have all these DNR regulations that now have to be met, and beyond this is the fact that you have to get financing from the bank, etc. No? So it's become much more difficult to set up a power plant.
You know, there are contemporary concepts of being ergonomic or being user-friendly. We accept these things now. So what you're saying is, if I had the capital to invest in the power industry, which is supposed to be lucrative because
It's
there's
very
obviously
lucrative, yes.
the supply shortage,
Yes.
and that can only grow. But a lot of policy matters will stop me or will discourage me.
It will slow you down. A number of organizations that will picket you, a mayor that needs to be re-elected, a DNR secretary or a DTI attaché who wants
To portray the green image.
Correct. So there's now more stakeholders that will slow down the process, and that is very difficult to deal with, especially because it takes 2 or 3 years at least to build a large power plant. But what takes longer is getting the permits prior to even digging the first shovel, so to speak. And so these are things that have to be fixed. No? In Mindanao, for example, there's one of the power plants in Iligan that has never been opened because of the fact that it faced a lot of regulatory and stakeholder issues, such that even when the power plant was finalized, they couldn't even turn on the switch.
Practical Business will be right back after a few reminders. Don't go away.